All right, so I'm going to get started on our mini lecture for this week. We're going to talk about a few things as it pertains to the academic writing project. I should have provided a few more details last week, but I got, believe it or not, really busy on stuff, and I'm not even making that up. And then I decided to take a little vacation for the rest of the week and home, of course. Excuse me. But we're going to talk about the academic writing project. But before you guys get into it, I think it's important that you guys write a proposal. So on D2L, I have opened a forum for you guys to post your proposals. But I want to go over how to do that. And then in the spirit of the academic writing project, I would like you guys to understand a few things as it pertains to academic writing. Because as I'd mentioned in our informal Zoom chat about an hour and a half ago, is that the ideas were good, but in some places the writing was a little deficient. Not to say that it took away from the quality of the projects. I just think it's important that you guys know this stuff, so when you take other classes and you have to do this sort of writing, it becomes a little more obvious for you guys. So like last week, we talked about how to compose a research question and a thesis. But for this mini lecture, we're going to talk about two things. The first is how to effectively compose a paragraph, and then the other is how to do transitions within your writing. Transitions are fairly simple, but you'd be surprised how often they're overlooked or how they're misused. So I'm gonna share my screen with you guys, and we're gonna go over a couple of things. The first thing I'm gonna do is go on to D2L and just show you some stuff. All right, so if we look at the original course schedule, you can see that I had the conference paper proposal due yesterday. Well, that's not going to work because I didn't really go over it, so I can't expect you guys to turn that in. So that's going to be due on the 17th. That's going to be Friday at 11:59 p.m. I will make a change of that so you guys do know, but it will be due on the Friday, 4/17/20 at 11:59 p.m. If you need to turn it in a little bit later, if you turn it in 12:01 or 1 or 2 or even the next day, it shouldn't be a problem because I'm obviously not going to start grading them at that time. But let's see here. In regards to the proposal, I would say that it's very important that you guys meet with me on Zoom or have an email dialogue with me in regards to the project so you guys aren't lost. And that would pertain to your proposal and your project. Because if you find yourself not being able to compose 3 paragraphs about what you're going to do in 5 pages, then it might be a good idea to talk to me. Some of your peers have already been having an email dialogue with me, and a few others have Zoomed with me. And I think that all dialogues on Zoom or through email have been what we call fruitful. So be sure to do that. It's not required, but I would strongly advise that you do that. That way you don't give me a 5-page paper that should be a 300-page book, or you give me a 5-page paper that should only be like a paragraph. So let's just have that conversation. And if we look here on, let's see here, I hope my screen is sharing. I'm not doing this again unless you ask me to. If we go under communication and this discussions, like where our regular old D2L post is, then I can show you guys where I want the proposal to be. So here you will see right above the quarantine lounge is that the academic writing project proposal. Submit your academic writing proposal here. You do not have to respond to any, but it would be useful to read as many as you can to develop an appreciation for the work your peers are doing. Do not submit until you watch this video. So if you submit and didn't watch this video, shame on you. But I would prefer that you understand how to go about writing a brief proposal. And this will double as your D2L post for the week. So killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Never a bad idea. So I will stop screen sharing here because as I have learned that if you just click on other things on Zoom while you're sharing, it won't share it. You have to make it a new share every time. So I will go over just a couple nitty-gritty details about writing a proposal. And this is just something I wrote last fall for the Liberal Arts Festival at Cal U. So here it is. So I have this as a clean copy on D2L under resources. Very easy to find. So the first thing you're going to want to have with your proposal is a title. If you're writing something a little bit more sophisticated, if you're performing a close reading of a novel, you can have some sort of literary title with colon and all that fun stuff. But in most cases, you want to have your title as clear and concise as possible. So you can see here that the title is Video Games as Literature. So this proposal is very clearly going to talk about video games as literature. And then we'll just kind of read through it. And what you want to try to do in 3 paragraphs or less, maybe even 2 paragraphs, is argue what you propose to do. You don't have to definitively say this is what you're going to do or this is what you did, but you think this is what you're going to do for your proposal and your project. And that way, because your project will always change. You say you're going to do one thing, and by the time you go ahead and write it, things change a lot more. So if we just look through this here, and I think I can move my pretty face a little bit. All right. So the way I set this one up was, according to a study by Electronic and Entertainment Design and Research, approximately 60, that's some grammar in there, 67% of Americans, or roughly 211 million people, play video games on at least one type of device, with more than half of those playing on multiple platforms. So the reader knows that, all right, video games about literature, but the first thing I'm doing is saying that like a lot of people play video games. This isn't just like some niche community. 211 people, or well more than half of Americans, play video games in some form. So I'm trying to use this statistic to dispel the fact that only young people play video games, when in fact the average gamer age is like 34, so it's older than me. So then I transition here and I highlighted this, which I don't know why I did, but whether people play Candy Crush on an iPhone or Call of Duty on PlayStation 4, video games are intricately weaved into the fabric of daily leisure. So I'm showing here that like people play video games even if they don't necessarily realize it. It's just not all about people playing video games and on PlayStation 4. It could be people playing on their phones. So video games, often played as a reprieve from the rigors of everyday life, require literacy to be played expertly. So if you're going to be a world-class Call of Duty player, you got to play a lot and you got to get good at it. If you're going to play NBA or any other game, there's a lot of hard games and it takes skill, hand-eye coordination, just a lot of skills. I like video games. And I kind of make the parallel between, it's like golf, even though it may not be. But then in the next paragraph, and this is something you might want to do for your proposal, is that you make this shift to what it is you're actually talking about. So in the first paragraph, I just provide some background information. You can be like, oh, Frederick Douglass originally, they thought he lived in Boston, but a study indicated he lived in Pittsburgh. And then you give facts to prove that. And so in the next paragraph, I get more specific to my topic at hand. So I say that video games contain narrative elements found in literature, drama, television, and cinema. So now I'm getting more to what I want to argue, because like they can contain these narrative elements. So if we're playing role-play first-person perspective games, we immerse ourselves in fabricated intertextual worlds, that contain references to history, literature, mythology, contemporary social issues. Can't talk tonight. Here I'm showing that video games are in fact literature because they're checking off a lot of the boxes and what we define literature. Then we pair this with the intertextual nature of role-playing and first-person perspective games with essential narrative elements. It adds a level of sophistication, yada, yada, yada. And then I'm saying that it's not this mindless pastime because, like, just like we seek out a book, we're seeking out video games for narrative. I mean, if you're just playing like Candy Crush or you're playing like shooters, that's one thing. But a lot of times people play video games for the narrative, and that's the argument I tried to make. I say in short that video games provide players a level of engagement not afforded in other narrative mediums, as video games allow the player to actively participate in the resolution of the plot. So here I'm starting to get to my thesis, because I'm saying that, okay, they're more sophisticated than we give them credit for, because a plot's being resolved, but rather than just reading the book like a rail shooter game, and we read it and then we take it and we get it, if we play games like the Elder Scrolls and a lot of RPGs, a lot of times we have an impact on the ending of the game, which is significant. And a lot of times in books, other than like Name Your Own Adventure, you don't get that. So then I say explicitly in the last paragraph what I'm going to do. So this was just for presentation. So this interactive presentation will encourage students to see the literary complexity of video games, as well as to engage them as a mode of critical discourse, so like a community of writing or thinking, rather than a passive leisure activity, by exploring how essential narrative elements are prevalent. So I more or less re-summarized what I did in the first couple contextual paragraphs. This is all you would do in your own proposal post, is you're going to say that this paper explores the feminist motifs in a genre of literature that was read primarily masculine, or something like that. Or if you're writing about, like I talked to Victoria about Wicked, and she's writing about backstory, she can write about how the thematic adaptation of Wicked adds a level of richness to the Wizard of Oz community, or something like that. You say very clearly what you plan on doing. But if you can't answer the first two paragraphs to say that what you want to do, if you can't say that in the first a paragraph or two before you do it at length, then you might have to think about your research question and your thesis. Sorry, Daddy needs his juice. Squirt. All right, so there's that. If you have any questions about writing a research proposal, just send me an email. But this functions as your D2L post, so I'm not going to go ahead and grade it like I would a paper. But I will be looking over it and providing feedback over the weekend. So be sure to do that, because I would prefer you. I don't really want you to start your paper until you do a proposal, so I know that you don't write a paper that might be too ambitious, but you can't do in 5 pages, because you might need 25 pages to do it. It might be a capstone project. So just check in with me on that. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I'm going to pause. All right, so now I want to talk about 2 things that are very important for your academic writing project. The first thing is how we structure paragraphs. When I was reading through a lot of the recovery projects, like I said earlier in this recording, some of the ideas were phenomenal. Like the arguments you made about recovery and how we should recover and what we should recover, I really enjoyed that. But sometimes I felt that when I was reading through it, some of you got tripped up in your paragraphs. So if there's anything I want you guys to learn from me other than don't eat bats, don't kill, is that your paragraphs need to be clear and focused, because and a lot of times if you are an English major, you want to be a great writer. And I'm not saying a lot of you guys are not, but a lot of you are good writers, but I want you guys to be great writers. That's something I still strive to be. All right, so I'm just going to run through some of Diana Hacker's rules for writers. I know it's like awkward. It should be the other way around. And this is a textbook I use in all of my teaching, because it has a lot of skills that are necessary for college level and academic writing. I reference it all the time. It's very useful. So now I'm going to share my screen and show you guys a couple things. I think this is it. Yes, you have to forgive my copy machine. This is my new copy machine. I take pictures and convert them to PDF. So we're going to talk first about building effective paragraphs. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. Maybe. This is, hold on. Nope. Hold on. Might have it here. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to talk about building effective paragraphs. I hope you guys can see this. You guys know what a paragraph is. It's like a group of words. You guys got that down. But I would like to just give you guys some general tried and true rules that I think will be very beneficial for your writing now and in the future and for the rest of your life. If you decide to get into a career as an academic, writing is very important. So I think that one thing I did not see happening in the recovery projects is that a paragraph needs to be unified around one main point. So as a rule of thumb, is a paragraph should always be one idea. So always keep that in mind. A paragraph should not be multiple ideas. It should always be one idea that pertains to the thesis. If it doesn't pertain to the thesis, then it doesn't need to be in the essay or whatever you're writing about. So it all has to relate. So here is like the nitty gritty. Here's like one of my like Taylor tips, if I ever had one, is that you always start your main point of a paragraph with a topic sentence. So as readers move into a paragraph, they need to know where they are in relationship to the whole essay. Now, I always talk about this metaphor of street signs in my composition classes. And this is exactly what you're doing to your reader. If you think back about the thesis statement in your introductory paragraph, I had you come up with the thesis statement. That is the first street sign, that this is what the paper is about. So the reader knows, okay, this is what the paper is about. And then as you move through the essay or whatever research-based project you're doing, you do this with these clear, coherent paragraphs that relate back to the thesis, but also maintain that the paragraph is only going to be about this one specific idea. So as it reads here underlined, so you're getting all my notes, is a good topic sentence, a one-sentence summary of the paragraph's main point acts as a signpost pointing in two directions, backward toward the thesis of the essay and forward toward the body of the paragraph. So it's like taking your essay in two directions. It references back to your thesis statement, whatever that may be, but it's also taking it and developing that thesis statement. So a great example here, and this may be simple for some, but I think it's a good refresher, is that if we just look at this paragraph, it says, all living creatures manage some form of communication. So that is a topic sentence of this paragraph. So if we think about it, the only thing this paragraph should talk about is all living creatures that manage form of communication. Shouldn't talk about spaceships. And if we look through the paragraph without reading about it, it says bees and their dance patterns. Males swim regularly upside down. Male deer and lemurs mark territorial ownership by rubbing body secretions. Dogs put their tail between their legs. And we too use gestures, expressions, postures, and movement to give our words points. So like that's what's saying, like that's talking about all living creatures are managing some form of communication. So that's what the paragraph is about, nothing else. And that's how you would do it in your own. And this gets really hard sometimes when you guys are trying to unpack and develop complicated ideas. You may start talking about like a literary text or a philosophical idea, and then it just sort of starts one place and then the paragraph ends at another. And that shows me that maybe you didn't have a lot of forethought in your writing and you were just writing and then rambling and you got to that point, which is good pre-writing, but you have to know that when you revise that your paragraphs have to maintain one idea. And then another topic sentence. This one says, to date, the full ramifications of the oil spill remain a question mark. So this is talking about the BP oil spill. The paragraph should only talk about the full ramifications that are unknown about it. So it shouldn't talk about anything else. And then here is another good note to take here, is that sentences that do not support the topic sentences destroy the unity of a paragraph. If the paragraph is otherwise focused, such sentences can be simply deleted or perhaps moved elsewhere. And then if we look at this paragraph here, we can see the topic sentence, and then we can see this also highlighted here. So the paragraph starts off, as the result of tax cuts, the educational facilities of Lincoln High School have reached an all-time low. So this paragraph should only talk about the educational facilities at Lincoln High School as it pertains to tax cuts. But then we see here this highlighted sentences that the chemistry instructor left to have a baby at the beginning of the semester, and most students don't like to substitute. At no point does that relate to the tax cuts at Lincoln High School. And sometimes that's what you guys do, is you have these digressions. And you just got to not include them. One paragraph, one idea, no matter what. That's always remember that. One paragraph, one idea. And then there's a couple more examples. I will post this reading to D2L, and then we will get there. I will have it there for you guys under resources if you want to reference it. But it's a good point of reference just to always think about that in your writing. One paragraph, one idea. And at this moment, I'm going to provide 3 bonus points. If you've seen the video, just email me and tell me the timestamp of the video and what I was talking about before and what I was talking about after. And I will give you 3 bonus points for checking and watching this video. But don't tell anyone. Be honest, be ethical. Hog those bonus points for yourself. So the other thing that I saw was a problem in some of your guys' writing, but I complimented if you guys did a good job on it, was providing transitions. So we look here at just the basic summary. Says that transitions help readers move from sentence to sentence. They also alert readers to more global connections of ideas, those between paragraphs or even larger blocks of text. So here are the nitty-gritty of it here. Sentence level transitions, and then there are paragraph level transitions right here. And we'll go over them very briefly. And I'm not going to have you guys do any exercise about this. I just think it's very important that when I commented on your paper, you can't say that I didn't tell you so. So, sentence level transitions. You can see certain words and phrases signal connections between and within sentences. Frequently used transitions are included in the chart on page 63. I'll show you that. So if we look here in this paragraph, the blue highlighted text talks about like a stegosaurus. But other than that, you can just see all these signals here that the writer uses, like first of all, for example, in other words, in fact. And you'll see other words like however and moreover and for example, things like that. You use these when we talk about the street signs in your writing. So I reference back to your thesis statement. Your thesis statement is telling your reader what you plan on arguing and what you plan on backing up with research and statistics. And then you give your reader the topic sentences, so they know exactly what that paragraph is going to be about. So when they're reading through it and it changes, then they're like, okay, something's wrong here. But if they know that one paragraph equals one idea, then they can focus solely on that idea. But the next thing you have to do is that when you're within these paragraphs, you have to give your reader a sort of signal, a street sign, how you're moving within your writing. And if you guys teach writing in the future, be sure to borrow these terminology about street signs and transitions. I think it works, because I will say, like, you're not using the street signs. You're taking your reader off the road with this digression. But if you think about keeping it related to your thesis and your topic sentence, you can usually make it work. So these are paragraphs within the paragraph. Excuse me, these are transitions within the paragraph. And then you also have paragraph level transitions. And these are just as useful as transitioning within the writing, because you don't want to make big jumps and big shifts in your writing. And I find that students are a lot better at the paragraph to paragraph transitions, but that's not always the case. So if we look at this example here in the blueprint, it says, consider aseptic packaging, the synthetic packaging for the juice boxes so many children bring to school. then, okay, so that topic sentence is about synthetic packaging, and then that's the paragraph's about. But then you can also see between paragraphs is that they transition. So they shift to a new paragraph, but they're also talking about the previous paragraph. And that can be challenging to do. But with the example here, it shows synthetic packaging between synthetic packaging. And you can find that to be very useful when you use keywords or key phrases that connect you to the previous paragraph, but also take you forward. And that's how they work. But it's also doubling as a topic sentence as well. So it's like, it's not quite the same, excuse me, it's not quite the same idea as it was on the first one. So in the second sentence, it says, what is true for juice boxes is also true for other forms of synthetic packaging. So it's maintaining that connection to the previous package about synthetic packaging, but now it's shifting to other forms of synthetic packaging. So you're keeping it linear, and your reader knows, and your reader appreciates that. And then here on page 63 are very useful transitions. And when you're doing your academic writing project, doing your proposal as well as the essay itself, I want you to be very deliberate in your usage of topic sentences, transitions, within and between. And this chart on page 63 gives you very good examples. So for example, it tells you all these other things. And then it gives you the right context for the transition you might want to use. And don't overdo it, and don't use them for the sake of doing it, but you'll find that using transitions, your reader will appreciate that a lot more. And then that pretty much concludes what I wanted to touch base on in regards to the street signs and writing. So I'll probably put a very brief in-class writing assignment on D2L for you guys to just for me to assess what it was I was talking about. But I want you guys to keep this in mind, because not only am I going to be grading the quality of your ideas, but I'm going to be very, very deliberate to grade the quality of your writing for the academic writing project. I want these things to be tailored, but not tailored to me, but tailored for good writing. If you have any questions, as a reminder, in regards to what you want to do for your academic writing project, before you get the ball rolling on your proposal on the project itself, it might be a good idea to meet with me here on Zoom, or have a FaceTime or chat on the phone, or we can have an email dialogue. I'd be much more comfortable knowing what you're going to do before you do it, rather than I get it and I'm like, this isn't going to work. So do that. Again, email me if you have to. Thank you so much, and I will have another mini lecture posted later this week.